What do you say on a day like today? Like, what do you stand up and say when what just happened? Like, how do you stand up and say the right thing? Or how do you know what it is that is the right thing? Do you stand up and say, thank God our houses weren't flooded? No. I mean, I am thankful that my house wasn't flooded, but there's too many people's houses who were flooded to say that. And I'm not sure we want to say that about God anyway, that somehow He spared and He didn't spare, and that's what God did. And so that's not what we're going to say this morning. Do we strike a celebratory tone? I guess so. I mean, we are blessed, and I am thankful, and I'm glad to see all of you, and I know that you're glad to see each other. So there is some celebratory, but at the same time, we remember that there are people who are not able to celebrate today. They're not even home, and when they go home, they're going to go to 6 feet of water and black mold growing in their home. All their furniture has floated off and down the river. I mean, it's just hard to know what to say. So this morning, we had a staff meeting yesterday, and I wrote some things down that I wanted to remind myself and them of, and I took some of those, and I thought, there's some things that our congregation needs to be reminded of, and so I just thought, that's what we're going to do today. This is a very different sermon for me. I'm not going to start with the scripture and then pull it apart piece by piece. I could have done that, but I decided not to do that. We are going to talk about the scriptures, and particularly this theme of God is with us, we are not alone. But there's just some things I think we need to be reminded of this morning after a storm like this. So the first thing, Parkway, God's been reminding me, and I want to remind you, is that this is the church of Jesus Christ, and we are in the business of making disciples for the transformation of the world. I think it's important to say that because that is our motivation. Our motivation is not just to help people, although helping people is good. Our motivation is not just to be generous, although being generous is super important. Our motivation is to make disciples for the transformation of the world. That's why you're sitting in this room, is because you are disciples, and you're becoming more of a disciple, and you're going to go out and be a part of the transformation of the world. It is a high privilege that we have to be the church of Jesus Christ in the world that we live in today. And within the larger body of the church with a capital C that exists to make disciples for Jesus Christ for the transformation of the world, we are Parkway United Methodist Church. And you know it, so you might as well just say it with me. We exist to demonstrate God's grace, to inspire a hope-filled journey with Jesus. Friends, that matters because, and for those of you who haven't been here since we adopted that as our mission statement a couple of years ago, that demonstrating God's grace, we don't want to be the church that talks about God's grace all the time, just simply talks about it. We don't want to be the church that just prays for it or hopes for it. We want to be the church, the people of Christ that demonstrate it, that say, you know what, I'm going to tell you about God's grace, but I'm also going to show you what it means. We want to be people who live God's grace out in such a way that other people will want to get to know the Jesus that we know. We're not going to be the loudest church on the planet. We're not going to be the loudest church in this community, at least not with our words. But I believe that we're going to be a loud church. Our love is going to speak loud. God's grace, by your actions, is going to speak loud. I am proud to be the pastor of a church and be part of a church that exists to demonstrate God's grace, to inspire a hope-filled journey with Jesus. Those are a couple of things I thought we needed to be reminded of this morning. One other thing I think we need to be reminded of this morning is that we are not settling for relief. As the church of God, we are aiming at resurrection. Friends, we're not just trying to repair people's floors. We will repair their floors. We're not just trying to cut out their sheetrock to get and putting down dryers to keep the mold from growing. We're going to do that too. But we're not going to settle for relief. We're aiming at resurrection. Friends, we have a bolder claim. We want to see lives restored. We want to see the dead come back to life, right? We want to see not just people's homes rebuilt. We want to see their lives rebuilt. We don't want to see their homes just simply restored. We want to see their lives restored. We will do the first, but we're aiming at the second. So I just think it was important for me to be reminded that we're a resurrection community, not a relief organization. And so we're going to aim higher than simply just doing relief. We are going to do a lot of relief, but we're aiming at resurrection. This one is the most important one to me, and it's the hardest one to figure out how to say it. But in my reflections all week, I have decided that the thing that is different for me this time than it was a year ago. I mean, if you recall, we've had 3 floods now in 15 or 16 months. And the previous 2 floods, even though we would never say this out loud, friends, I'll own it for myself, and maybe you're brave enough to own it for yourself. Even though we responded and we gave money and we did flood buckets and we did some rebuilding work and all those kind of things, always, I think, this is just my opinion now, I think in the background it was always, not in a mean way, but there was always this sense of, well, it really stinks that it happened to them. I'm just so glad it didn't happen to us. There's always been this us and them. There are those of us who live behind levees. I'm one of them. And there's this thing that, where we kind of say, well, and I'm not even saying that's wrong. I'm not even saying it's bad. I just know that there are people whose homes have now been flooded 3 times in 15 months. And we can say, well, they should move their house. Well, some of them can't afford to move their house, friends. Some of them, they're living in the only place that they can live. Some of them are living with 3 other families because they can't afford to move somewhere else. Some of them are living in a house that their great-great-great-grandparents live in, and that their family, the only support network they have is within 3 blocks of them. There's always this kind of unspoken us and them. I don't think it's in a mean way. I don't think anybody means it that way. But I just think we sometimes think that way. And friends, what is changing in us, I think, because of this experience, is that what has always happened to them, this time it happened to us. The folks who didn't have levees, and the folks who do have levees, the folks who are lower on the elevation and closer to the river, and the people who are farther away from the river, many of us got forcibly evacuated from our homes. And there, but by the grace of God, went every single person, who is in one of those communities. And so this time, friends, I think, I could be wrong, I think our response will be different. Because I think we understand now. When I had to get my family into the car, after a forced, a mandatory evacuation at a time when I couldn't even find a road out of my neighborhood that I thought would lead anywhere but towards the Brazos. And I had to have Eric Percival come and meet us in the Randall's parking lot and lead us to the only way that we could figure out how to get out of our neighborhood, friends. The us and them is gone. I think our response will be different. I'm counting on our response being different this time, because there is no more us and them. There is only us. There never has been, but it's been easy for those levees to be more than just levees. They've been walls. They've been barriers. They've been us and thems. Now it's all of us. And that leads to the next thing I think that I want to put out there. We're going to ask this church to respond heroically. And I believe that we will. Again, because there is no more us and them, I think we're going to be different. I think we're going to be changed by this encounter in a way that will be good for us. And I don't, if there's ever been a time in your life or in mine, or at least in any time that I can recall in my lifetime, that there's ever been a time for me and for you to look deep, to look for our time and our talent and our treasure, to look into those places and say, I can't do everything, but I can do something, and I will not fail to do the thing that I can do, then that time is right now. So whether it's your Saturdays or your Sundays after church, whether it's your Labor Day holiday, whether it's some vacation time that you've left 4 weeks of vacation on the table every year for the last decade because you could never find a time to use it, maybe you need to dig deep this year and figure out how to use it. You look into your talents the things that you're good at, things that you're wired to do. You may not be able to wield a hammer right now. You may not be able-bodied enough to do that, but maybe you can wield a spatula, right? Maybe you can wield a washing machine. You know, we have tons of needs that are going to be coming. And as a church, we're going to try to be very focused on what we put out there. We're not trying to do everything. We're going to say what we're focused on is this. There are tons of other churches and other relief organizations. They're going to focus on what they're good at. We're going to focus on this. What we're going to focus on here at Parkway is we're going to host all hands, which is, you'll see them starting next week. They'll line the walls behind black pipe and drape. They're staying in these rooms down here for, you know, at least for today and maybe the next couple of days. There's 25 of them now. There'll be 50 to 60 of them. Every single day of the week except for Mondays. And for the next 2 weeks, they're going to go out on Mondays. They're going to go out 6 days a week, leave at 8, come back at 4. You don't have to wait for me to organize a trip or Mac to organize a trip or anybody to organize anything. If you want to go work, you want to go muck and gut, those guys are going out every single day except for Mondays. And you can just show up. You fill out a form and you go out with them. They'll even give you a cool shirt. You go out and you can work with them at any time. We are going to organize some church work days. We're going to organize some multi-church work days like we did last summer. But you want to know what we're doing? That's one of the things that we're doing. That's one of the main things that we're doing. And with them being here, these people are, by the way, I've met people from Minnesota and Massachusetts. I've met people from England. I've met people from Arizona and Las Vegas. I've met people from all over the country and now all over the world who are coming into All Hands to volunteer. People are beating down the door to come into this community to help us, and we're going to help them help us. They do the pre-site work. They buy the materials. They have the tools, although you can bring your own tools, and then all we have to do is go out with them and work. But if you can't do that, if you don't have the time to do that, maybe you don't have the talent or you don't think you do, by the way, you don't have to have a ton of talents because they took me last year. You think you can't do that? I bet you can. But even if you can't, if you're not able-bodied enough to do that, then we're going to feed these guys, right? We want them to not have to worry about anything. We want to feed them. 6 nights a week, we're going to feed them. Maybe 7. Is it 7? 6. We're going to feed them 6 nights a week. If you can't wield a hammer, wield a spatula, right? We're going to try to do their laundry so that they don't, that's one less thing they have to worry about, right? These people are coming from all over the world to come and help us. We want to bless them. Maybe you can't wield those other 2 things, but you can wield a washing machine. We're gonna be taking donations, right? Certainly, you can look into your checking account, friends. If we did a 3-month, I'm gonna get real here. If we did a 3-month capital campaign, and we said, hey, we're gonna build a gym, we could raise. This church has demonstrated our capacity to raise over $1 million in that 3-month period. And usually it's a 3-year campaign or something like that. There is no question in my mind that in our offering this morning, just this morning, or through our text app, or text to give, or through our app, or whatever, that we could raise $50,000 or $100,000 if we all just said, you know what? And I'm not saying everybody can give equally. I'm not here to shame anybody or guilt anybody. I'm just saying there's no question in my mind that we could raise that kind of money. We're going to ask you to respond heroically, and we believe that you're going to. That we're going to. It's not just you. I'm going to do it too. This is the last thing, and I told this to my staff yesterday. We're going to cry when we want to. And in the next few months, we're going to laugh when we need to. And then we're going to celebrate when we ought to. Friends, there is so much brokenness, there is so much despair, there is so much anxiety and stress and displacement, there's so much bad news, and we're going to have to mourn it as we see it and as we live it and as we go and help. It's going to be overwhelming, and in those moments you are going to need to cry because you got to take care of yourself too. And then there's going to be moments when we're going to laugh, and we're not going to feel guilty for it. We're going to laugh because we need joy, because we need joy to be able to do the things that God is calling us to do in the coming weeks. So we're going to laugh, and we're not going to feel guilty about it. And then there's going to be moments when we need to celebrate, because if we don't celebrate, we'd all go crazy, right? If we don't celebrate, I mean, the other night, it was so funny, we said, hey, we got some all-hands volunteers. The church was still under mandatory evacuation, so we couldn't even house them yet. And so I said, hey, we need 40 beds or 25 beds or whatever the number was at that time. And within, 5 or 6 hours, we had all those beds covered. You know what happened? 30 minutes later, the evacuation got lifted. I was like, dang it. But you know what I did? I went and high-fived everybody that was in the Percival house where we were staying, just to say, you know what? We had people willing to give us 40 slots for people to stay. We celebrated it, even though we didn't need it. Friends, we're going to celebrate whenever, in those moments when we need to, when we ought to. Because if we don't celebrate those little victories, then we'll feel like we're not making any progress. Last thing is, friends, we're going to do it together. You don't have to wait on the church to do anything. You can do, if you know of a Red Cross shelter, you know of a need, go see that need, meet that need. That's what Jesus people do, right? That's what disciples of Christ do. That's what followers of Jesus do. They have the eyes of Christ. They have the mind of Christ. They have the heart of Christ. You see a need, go meet the need. But we're going to do a lot of things together as well. And we're going to try to keep you focused on the things that we think that are right in front of us, that we can do better than anybody else in the world. Right here, right now, we can do this. And we're going to keep you focused on those things. So we're going to do all those things. We're going to cry and laugh and celebrate, and we're going to do it together. I want to remind you, in the midst of all of this, someone's going to say, well, you haven't even referenced the scriptures yet. I want to do a quick rundown. I want you to remember what's true all the way Old Testament to New Testament. Every time something happens in the life of the people of God, God reminds them that He is with them. So, like Moses, right? When he's at the burning bush, and God said, hey, I want you to go to the most powerful man on the planet and his armies and tell him to let my people go. And Moses is like, I'm just Moses, right? You realize I'm just Moses? And God says, yeah, but I'm going to be with you, right? Exodus 3. Next time Moses is talking to God, God's saying, hey, I want you to leave Mount Sinai. I've given you the commandment. I want you to leave, and I'm going to send you out. But I can't. God says, I can't go with you because you're a stiff-necked people, and if I go with you, I might just zap you, right? I might just destroy you because you guys are so stubborn. And then Moses, which opens the door for Moses to say, hey, God, if you don't go with us, we're not going anywhere. And God says, okay, I'll go with you. I'll do the very thing that you have asked because I am pleased with you and I know you by name. In Isaiah, right, God says, when you go through the waters, I will be with you. When the waters rise around you, I'll be in the midst of it with you. In Jeremiah 29, when the people have been in exile for a really long time, and they think God must have forgotten us. What's this terrible thing that's happening to us? Where did God go? In Jeremiah 29, God gives a word to Jeremiah, and Jeremiah says to the people, God says to the people through Jeremiah, I know the plans I have for you. They are plans to prosper you and not to harm you. They are plans to give you a hope and a future. What he's really saying is, I'm with you. I haven't forgotten you. I haven't gone anywhere. I'm with you. And then here's the one I want you to remember more than any of them. In Matthew 28, after the resurrection, right? Jesus, and he's had the disciples, and he gets crucified, and he comes back to life. In Matthew 28, the very last thing he says to the disciples is, go make disciples of all nations, go baptize all of them, go teach them everything I've commanded you. And you got to imagine the disciples' eyes got this big when he said, yeah, there's 12 of you. I want you to go make the whole world Christian, right? I want you to help them to know who I am and how much I love them and what I want them to do. And their eyes got this big. And then Jesus follows that up with a simple word. What he says is, and surely I am with you always to the very end of the age. It's the last thing he told them before he left the planet, right? It's the last thing he says in Matthew. I will be with you always till the very end of the age. So friends, I just want to end this morning by telling you that whatever storms you're going through, God is with you. The storm that we just went through, God was with you. When you go out on those sites and you can't believe your eyes, and you hear the stories of people whose homes have been destroyed 3 times in 15 months. When we go back and muck and gut a house that we mucked and gutted last year, and you want to just break down, and you can't even imagine how they're not breaking down. Friends, in that moment, God is with you. When you start to let your heart go back to normal, when our hearts start to kind of get hard again and we forget how much love and care and compassion we have seen in the last 7 days, when that happens, friends, God is with you. And He wants to soften that heart. Friends, it's an assurance that the people of God have always wanted. They've always needed from God. God, are you there? God, are you still with us? Do you still love us? Have you left us? Have you forgotten us? Are you punishing us? They always look to God. God, where are you? And God continually says, and He is saying today, I am with you. You are not alone. Thanks be to God.